Hello, I am Bridget Rowe. I am energy. I'm not just any type of energy. I am dark energy. I am powerful. And I am who I say I am. The purpose of this video is to talk to you today about energy, about voodoo, about dark matter, about dark magic, whatever you call it in your physical journey. And first of all, before I begin, I want to begin with letting you know I am sharing my life with you. And when a person sits there and shares their life with you, that is all that they have. You know, people get married and decided they want to share their life by saying I do to that person. That is all that they have. That is the ultimate gift. Even though this is my past of my life, I just want to share it with you and maybe it would help you in your physical reality, because I believe that we all are reflections of one another. Okay? So, let's begin. When I talk about voodoo or dark magic, I am not talking about baneful magic. I am not talking about wishing. Baneful magic is like when you're trying to do some type of ritual in order to see to it that someone is hurting or ultimately dies. They're ultimately destroying. You're destroying that particular energy. I am not talking about poking with pins any dolls. I'm not talking about that. I don't have any chicken bones in my backyard. I don't have those things. I'm not talking about those things. I don't practice those things. If you have some type of energy that is coming toward you, I would say that you would make that energy neutral. You would destroy or break that energy. You would send like a return to sender on that particular type of energy. But the reason being that I am not, and I'm specifying this in the beginning, talking about baneful magic or evil magic, is because you don't know. You don't know just looking at a person, the gang of ancestors that are walking with them or talking with them. You don't believe in ancestors. Well, let's call them guides or angels or their protectors. You don't know who mine are, because when you see me, you're looking at me in the physical. Meanwhile, I might be oblivious to the things or the energies that you have projected toward me, or thought, or the hate that you have toward me. It might go over my head, but my ancestors and my guides know. And don't undermine other people's guide or ancestor because they have ancestors. Some just like wishing somebody would, you know. Some of them, well, I would say really all of them are protectors, you know. That's why they call them guides, you know. And so that is what I am not talking about in this particular video. We have to take down the stigma that everybody that does voodoo or dark magic is trying to hurt people and they're evil and they're going to hell. First of all, I don't believe in a place called hell. I believe hell is a mindset. So we need to get over the childish Christianity thought or belief that you're going to hell because you're not doing what Jesus said do. Come on now. Come on. Let's vibrate a little bit higher than that. So anyway, I want to begin off talking about my journey and how it found me, and I was not searching for it. So when I say black magic, what I am saying is that I am going to the source, which is the universe, which is dark matter, okay, which is nature. I'm going to the source in meditation practices, and that is where the darkness comes from. So I am going to the darkness and creating so that the things that I create will manifest into my physical reality right here in this dimension. So this ties, in my belief, to when they say in the biblical text, anything that is done in the dark shall be brought to light. Because that is how you create. That is where creation began, in the darkness. There was darkness upon the face of the deep in the beginning. So some people call themselves light workers. So with calling themselves light workers, they are in the physical already. They didn't tap into the dark. So I like to tap into the dark, where all creation begins, instead of dealing with the light energy. Because I am the darkness. I am that darkness. I manifested in this physical reality because I am merely a condensed version of the sun. That's how I was created and manifested in this physical reality. So anyway, I want to begin with talking about my story, my journey on how it found me. I grew up in the church. My father wasn't present in my home. For those of you who read my book that I wrote, He Who Has an Ear, Let Him Hear. My father was not present. And so my mother and father separated when I was about 5 years old. And with that being said, my mother found religion after that. After that, my mother was a minister. My uncle was a pastor. My aunt was a pastor. Needless to say, I spent a considerable amount of time in the church watching people who love God the most hurt the most in life. And as a little girl, I played many roles in church. I was a pastor's assistant. I was a treasurer. I was a camera girl. I was an usher. I was in the choir. I played it all. You know, because if it wasn't my mother's church, it was the uncle church or the aunt church or me visiting the church. Right? And so out of all the roles that I played, I remember vividly the one that sticks to me in my mind is being an usher. Because when I was an usher in the church, you know, we were in this Baptist church, so there was this healing and deliverance moment in the church when you get in line if you needed a healing and deliverance. And so I was the usher next to the pastor, the apostle, or whoever, and I had the little sheet or the cape or whatever to throw on the ladies when they fell on the floor because they caught the Holy Ghost or whatever. And so in between that interaction with that pastor, I would hear everything. You know, I was listening as a little girl. I was listening. And I heard everything, every request these people were making and the things that they wanted God to bless them with. And what I realized was that there were two types of people that will come into that line. There was one that will come and they'll receive their healing. They'll receive their blessing and then they'll go on in the journey. You wouldn't see them anymore. But then there were those that were on the rinse and repeat cycle. Every week they'd be back in line with the same request and that nothing was happening in their physical reality. And I had my hand, I was really shy and really introverted. And I would always have my head down and I would be holding the little cape. And I would say to myself, when I grow up, I do not want to be like these people. When I grow up, I am getting out of here. Meanwhile, in between time, we would have revivals and stuff, and the ministers and apostles that would travel in town, they would always prophesy to me. They would prophesy to me and tell me what I'll be doing today. Tell me that I'll be speaking to you. But at that moment, I didn't understand what it was. At that moment, it sounded to me like they were saying that I was going to be like my mother. They told me that I would travel the world. They told me that I would be a healer. They told me that I would touch lives. And oh my gosh, you're a sleeping giant. They would just like, if they would see me, they would be like, oh my God, and screaming like when they made connection with my eyes. And roughly, I'm around 12 years old when this was happening. And I'm like, oh my, yeah, I got to get out of here. So needless to say, I ran from church. When I was 16 years old, I got my first call. By 17 years old, I was out of my mother's house, running, just wanting to live just a normal life because I had issues. You know, I had issues because I didn't have a father. I didn't even know how to love myself. You know, I was introverted. I was holding all my pain and this anger inside of me. And then they were telling me that I had to live this life and just be like Jesus. And I saw these people hurting and I didn't want to hurt. But then it came my turn that I was going through some things and I was hurting. I was hurting. You know, I was growing up, you know, roughly maybe about 19, 20 now at this time. And I was, you know, I had my own little place and stuff. And I would go and see my mother and she wanted me to come back into church at that time. And I never forget, I went to her house one day and I was crying. I was hurting, just things that I was going through in my personal physical reality is in the areas of mind, body, and soul. And she told me, in the midst of me crying out to her, asking her advice as a mother talking, you know, as a daughter talking to her mother. And she told me, she said, did you pray? Did you talk to Jesus? And now without the lack of respect, but with anger at the same time, as I could feel horns just coming out of my skull, I looked at her and I said, don't you tell me to pray. Don't you tell me anything about Jesus. I want to talk to my mother. And she was like, oh, okay, what's wrong, you know? And so I talked to her, and I really feel like I had never really talked to my mother. I was always talking to church people, you know, always talking to people who were just trying to hold on to Jesus' unchanging hand. And I just felt like, you know what, there's more to life than this, you know, because I remember when I was in school and I would go to school and I had friends who were atheists, but they had beautiful lives. People that didn't even go to church, they had beautiful lives. And here everybody in the church seemingly was broke or abused or single or depressed in some type of way, off balance, sick, always in the hospital. And I didn't want any part of that, because I felt like if they were doing things that was seemingly like God wanted, why were they being so cursed? Why were they going through so much? So needless to say, life went on for me, you know, and I didn't worry about it anymore as far as trying to reach out to anybody that was in religion. I pulled away from that even the more. And, you know, they would often tell me, you know, you're going to go to hell, and, you know, you need to come back home, you know, to your first love, and all of those little things that, you know, they say. But I was on a mission to seek knowledge, to find my larger part of me, you know, for my soul to be at ease more than anything else. And so I remember I would read all kind of things, you know. We were in Baptist religion, so I wanted to find out what the Jehovah's Witnesses were doing. I read the Holy Quran. I wanted to find out about those Hebrew Israelites, and I wanted to seek everything that I could, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Book of Enoch, you know, even the Egyptian hieroglyphics. You know, I wanted to understand that, and I wanted to understand about the universe and the stars. And so I was already, you know, at this ease and this harmony. And then I had children, so I said, okay, I'm going to start living this healthy life. And I found out about the herbs and the spices and the nuts and the seeds and the fruits and vegetables that were good for minerals. And so I understood these things. I was milking all of this knowledge, but I wasn't part of anything, because my thing was, I didn't want to be part of a cult. I didn't want to be a part of anything. I just wanted to be me for a change, you know, because I was always some type, you know, because with my mom evolving in religion, we were different types, you know. It was moments where we only could wear skirts and stuff, you know. And so I didn't want to be part or labeled for nothing. I just wanted to be Bridget for a little moment in my life and understand who Bridget was. And so as life evolved for me, I began to meditate. You know, I wanted to learn about meditation. Meditation felt really, really good for me. It felt so good. It felt so at peace for my soul, because I understood at that point, okay, I'm trying to get my mind, body, and soul at sync with each other so I could become one, so I could connect to the universe and everything would just be at ease. And that was just my peace, you know. That was just my moment where I could just center myself and all would be well for those moments of meditation. And I was balancing my energy. So when I would meditate, I would imagine that I was a puffy cloud in the universe, but still connected, and that's where my grounding took place. I was still connected to Mother Nature, but at Mother Earth, and at the same time, I was flying in the sky. I was flying in the sky with the birds. You know, I would imagine that I was next to the white doves, and I knew all of these dove names one by one. They all looked alike, but I knew them. And as we fly across the universe, you know, they would come one by one and I'll say their name. And it was just so much fun for me. So deep of a meditation. And then one day during my meditation, while I was up there flying in the universe, my white doves turned into black vultures. And they began to peck at me. just gnaw at me in my face, and it was like they were trying to destroy me. And I came out of the meditation, and I was so afraid, and I didn't want to go back into meditation for a long time because I got afraid. I felt so fearful. And let me tell you something about fear. Fear is ignorance. And fear, once you allow it to consume you, it'll begin to grow. It'll begin to grow so powerful that it'll alter your life. You know? And so I begin to get really, really fearful of meditation. And I remember going to work and coming home, and I'll be like, okay, I'm going to try the meditation thing again today. And then in my head, I would hear this energy, this telepathic communication said, I wish you would. Good, so I could jump inside of you. As if it was like a lower energy or demon in my home that wanted to jump inside of me, you know, when I meditate. So I was like, no, well, I guess I'm not going to do that today. Because I was afraid, you know. And so days would pass, and I wanted to meditate because it used to feel so good, but just that one bad experience with the birds, it really threw me off. And it got so intense that my house began to get cold. My house would begin to get cold, and it was almost like somebody was sitting on my sofa, like an energy, a dark energy. And I would say a man, because it felt like masculine energy that was sitting on my sofa every day that I would come home. And to a point where I was afraid. I felt afraid to come home. And I never forget, I told one of my coworkers, you know, when it was almost, you know, time for me to go home, I just bust out and I cried. I was like, I don't want to go home. And he was like, "Babe, what's going on? Somebody doing you something?" And I was like, no, it's just like this energy. It's just like something is there. Something is inside of my home, and I don't know what it wants, and it bothers me. And he told me, this seemed like it was like a reminder of church again. He told me, he said, Bridget, I know you evolving in your journey, but if that's all you know is Jesus, and you don't know where you're going, why don't you just call on Jesus? That's all you used to. I mean, I know you're trying to do, get out of the religion side of it, but just call on the blood of Jesus, is what this person told me. And he meant well. And I said, okay. Okay. And so when I went home, I made sure I went home by myself that day, and I opened up my front door. I walked to the back door, and I walked in there by that sofa in that area that felt really cold to me. And I said, I bind you away from me. I cast you out of my house. You do not belong here. Leave here now. Go and never return again. And I said this, I didn't have any sage. I didn't call on no Jesus, no nothing. It was me against this energy. And I meant business. I meant power. I wasn't afraid. I knew who I was. And I was ready to go to battle because I wanted my house to be peaceful again. And so I felt to the core of me this energy passing by and leaving my home. And so after that, I began to meditate, and I will go in. I would start at small increments, and I would go back into meditation, and I would increase my increments from like 5 minutes to 10 to 15, and I was back good again to maybe 30 minutes of meditation, and I was good again, and I had overcame that fear. And see, why I'm mentioning the fear to you is because I want you to understand that fear is tied to ignorance. And if you allow fear to consume you, it will grow and it will stop you from evolving in your journey. So this is why I believe that people are still in religion, because of the fear factor that they give it, the fear of the unknown, the fear of exploring any other path because that's all they knew. But ultimately, we ourselves have to deal with our own fears. We have to challenge our own fears, because if not, they'll grow. And at the end of the day, we are the ones who created them in the first place. So we have to allow them to come to surface and be dealt with. You know, and at the end of the day, we fear things based upon the ignorance, the proportion of ignorance we have towards them. That's why we fear, because we don't know what it is. We haven't explored it. Also, oh no, I'm not going over there. That alley looks a little scary, but we have never even explored. Meanwhile, somebody could walk down there and be like, what? I live right here. My house is down here. I have to go down here. So anyway, after I went through that with the meditation, it was just like, come on, I'm ready now. Because I was dealing with my fears. And so I moved from that with the meditation, and then I ended up getting me an altar and starting to talk to my ancestors, the ones that I knew of that had died in my family. I began to light candles. I knew about the herbs and spices and all of this already because I had dealt with them with my healing of my body. People will come up to me and just leave a book in my mailbox or on my desk and be like, hey, I left that for you. I think you need to read that book. And it'll be a book on the Egyptian hieroglyphics. It'll be a book on summoning spirits. It'll be a book that was really deep, and they'll say that, oh, you could benefit from that. I never once looked for any of these things. They came to me. And so one night I was on a date. I was on a date with this guy, and after we got off the date, right across the street they had this man, and his energy was like calling for me. And I was like, I want to go across the street and see what this man is talking about. He had a little table, a little vending table in downtown New Orleans. And when I walked up to this man, he had an amethyst on his chain. It was really big. And I was like, what is that? He had things on his table. But the thing I was drawn to was the very thing that the vendor was wearing. And he told me what it is, and I was like, wow, that's powerful. I want one of those. He was like, well, I don't sell that. I sell this here stuff. This is my jewelry here. But he told me, he said, but if you go right around the corner, there's a store that sells these. So I went around the corner, me and my date. I wanted this amethyst so bad that my date ended up buying it for me because I was so wild by it. Because in my journey, it was like I was being drawn to it. And so it reminded me of, like in the biblical text, you know how they say that royal priesthood? Because it was purple. And I later found out that it was tied to the Christ consciousness energy, right? That purple, that higher chakra energy. And so I was learning, and things were just coming to me. So that began to become my favorite store. And so, of course, I ended up buying some tarot cards from that store. And tarot cards, it's everything about energy. It's all energy here that I'm speaking of. So I would flip my cards over and just do like a reading. And I would stop based upon how the energy or how I felt the need to stop. And that would be the card that I would flip over, because it's all energy. It's all a feeling. Everything is connected. So I grew and I evolved, and then I began to want to work with a goddess, Oshun. That was the first goddess that I worked with, the goddess Oshun. And I chose the goddess Oshun because she was a goddess of love. She was a goddess of beauty, of prosperity, of fertility. And so that reflects my feminine energy. That reflects the higher version of what I would call myself. And when I say that I will work with her, I don't mean that I was worshiping her. I don't mean that I was bowing down. I mean that I was establishing a working relationship with this energy. And just like the pastors, per se, when pastors get on the pulpit and they start huffing and puffing and they say that they got the Holy Spirit. So they're dealing with another energy. The gift of prophecy, they're dealing with another energy. Just like in the music industry, some people get on a stage and they turn into another energy. See, the thing is, some people will turn into this good energy, or it'll be a bad energy. Some people, it just depends upon what their heart is and what their intentions are. But for me, my intentions was never ill toward anyone or anything. I just wanted to find out my true power. I just wanted to be in a position where I was creating my reality. That was it for me, and that is still it for me. I wanted to make sure that the very things that I wanted, that all of my guides, my ancestors, my protectors, we were all on the same frequency, all in line with the things that I wanted in this physical reality for my life. Because I feel like I had already been through hell. So it was time to come out as a goddess. I feel like I had already been sick, so it was time for me to be well. And so this is how dark magic found me. I didn't go look for nothing. It found me because I believe that our steps are already orchestrated by source energy. You could start off in Yale or you could start off in jail. You still gonna get to the very place that you were predestined to be. And whatever that place is for you, it doesn't have to be the route that I went, but I wish you well in going to that place. Because you never get it wrong. We are eternal beings. Okay? Energy is not destroyed. It is simply transformed. So we get it. We can do it over and over and over again until we seemingly get to doing it right. Or jump up higher to our higher Christ consciousness. And none of this begin to feel, you know, outsiders looking in, when they in religion and all, they'll look at me and they'll be like, well, you know, God said, and all these things, and they'll begin to quote these scriptures of these biblical texts. But as I look back, well, Jesus was working magic. If you understand that biblical text, you know, the sun book that you read in if you're in religion. And I look at the book of Psalms, which is a book of spells. And then I look at the communion as a ritual, you know, and I look at King James practicing demonology. And I'm like, oh, okay. And the Bible in itself talks a lot about stars and astrology. I mean, if you understand that biblical text. So for me, everybody has their own journey, but for me, this is the place that I finally feel belonged, part of, connected to all things in the universe. And I have so much love, so much support from my ancestors, my guides, the angelic beings, that I'm finally home. I am finally in heaven. And I found my heaven right here on earth. Be blessed.